take us over to Africa and Sudan, and
Yeah. So
what was that
yeah,
like?
I did a trip there. That was last year, end of last year. I mean, that was just, that the focus of that was Darfur, and yeah, it's hard to describe. Absolutely heartbreaking. Of what these people, I guess the inhumanity of it all, the sort of, I think just the worst things of what humans can do to each other. That's what's happening, just, yeah, the dehumanization of somebody else because of their skin color, their tribe. And what you are seeing in Darfur, really in blunt terms, it's a racial war. You've got Arabs versus sort of the Black African tribes. And I don't see it framed enough that way as what it should be, because that is the reality of what is happening there. There's a lot of outside interests, as well. These weapons aren't just kind of flying their way into the country and into the hands of, the RSF. But yeah, if you could degrade, like it blows my mind that humans have the ability to degrade another human to that extent. Just the
To the point
levels,
where they don't see them as humans.
Absolutely, yeah.
They are problems that are to be mitigated.
The level
not
of
humans.
Sexual violence, the level of torture, the level of absolute, just sort of annihilation.
Darfur, it rises to the level of genocide, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw that, in the early 2000s. And essentially, yes, that's what we are seeing again. We are seeing it again, but it doesn't get a lot of attention. It doesn't make the headline news the way that other conflicts like in the Middle East do. And I think the easiest explanation for that is because the US doesn't have the same commitment or level of interest.
There's no US troops necessarily.
There's no US troops. I guess US interests aren't hugely affected by, what happens in that region.
There's no mineral rights at play.
Right. So we don't see it as much. And, that is, I do see that from both sides. I see on one hand, there are so many hotspots and hardships in the world. The US can't possibly.
And I don't want to make that sound like I'm saying we should have boots on the ground in Darfur. We certainly don't need another.
So I see it certainly from the sort of the pragmatic side of being like, well, the US it can't be everywhere. It can't focus. Like I get that, but at the same time, it's really hard to kind of sit by and see this happening and watch this happening and know that while we are the most powerful country on the planet, that we're not really doing a lot. And sometimes you don't have to do a lot to be able to make a difference. But in speaking out, that's usually a big first step in and in these countries that are supplying weapons, to the RSF are allies to the United States. So we do have leverage, but
we have leverage everywhere in the world that we choose to have it.
Just not the political will. And so that is really, that's really painful to kind of sit and watch and feel just, very incredibly helpless.
I'm very ignorant of the situation there. I've never covered Africa professionally. I have traveled very little there. And so I know the broad strokes about some of the things that are happening with Al-Shabaab and some different terrorist organizations. I've looked into a little bit about like the 127E programs that the U.S. military runs in different countries around Africa. But I say that to say largely, I know the wave tops and that's it, particularly in Sudan and Darfur. Is it good guys versus bad guys, or people in power versus people not in power? Or is it truly, when you say it's, Muslim Arabs versus tribal Africans? Yeah. Is one of them good and one of them bad? Or is it kind of just humans fighting each other?
I would say, in the mix of it all, certainly, RSF is what they used to call the Janjaweed in the Darfurian conflict in the early 2000s. And that is, I guess, they're backed by a lot of wealthy Arab countries. This is very oil-rich land. This is particularly...
So there is mineral rights.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is gold, gold in particular. But this is why a lot of the Arabs are kind of trying to take over the land where the Darfurian tribes are, because it's very valuable land. So there is that part of it that's been long simmering conflict. And the tribes in this, in this rendition of it, back in the, again, early 2000s, it was, Omar Bashir was the dictator who was kind of I guess, backing the Janjaweed against the people. This case, he's obviously gone. So the government troops, I guess, are the ones that are fighting the RSF. And certainly within those government troops, there are atrocities that committed. There are bad apples. But, if I have to look at it, it's sort of you can't morally equate each side. And I think really for a long time, that's what used to frustrate me about Darfur, was that we'd see, at the time, Anthony Blinken, he would often come out with these statements, or the State Department would come out with sort of the statements that were both basically like both sides need to stop, both sides need to, and I get that, but there is clearly one side that's doing things that are a lot more atrocious than the other side, which is the RSF.
Curious
yes,
about.
So the RSF being, those militias, and they're backed by, Libya, they're backed by UAE, they're backed by all these other foreign interests. And not to say that, that the army is not getting support from foreign interests too, because it also is, gets support from Iran and other places. But at the end of the day, it's again, you're trying to morally equate two different sides.
Is this like the definition of a proxy war?
In some ways it is, yes, because there are a lot of outside interests. I mean, obviously, things are happening on the ground between, groups that live there, but there's certainly, I would certainly say there's a lot of elements of a proxy war.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's hard to look at any war now and not totally see proxy elements.
And this is the way wars have gone since for millennia.
Yeah.
There's always outside foreign interests. The American Revolution, there was outside interests. We had the French involved. We had the French, I think, who were very much at odds with the UK back then. You're like, that was very convenient that those rascally Americans were given the British fits. It's like that with any war. That you're going to have somebody where one side is going to, one nation or group of people will benefit by one side winning versus another. And whether that's mineral rights, whether that's influence in a certain region, whatever it is, a place to put a base because it's strategically, convenient to reaching a place like China or Russia. Like, these are things that you have to think about in all of these. But for me, I'm always very interested in the morality of war at this point. And I think it's always I always have such a tough time forming an opinion on these things when there's not a clear good guy or bad guy.
Yeah.
And some of these things in Africa, you look at them and you're like, gosh, one side is like clearly oppressing the other, but then that other side was like doing really shitty things before. And I don't know how I feel about this. And I'm kind of glad America's not involved, but it's certainly terrible. And then you think about the kids who they don't choose. They just drew the shittiest, shortest straw of the life lottery of where they were born. And it's hard. I don't know how to feel about it necessarily.
It is. And it is hard, I think. And I think about this a lot too, in the sense that, I think having spent so much time in war, being very anti-war, but also in the sense that I don't see anything good come out of conflicts, wars. You end up with, who makes money out of them? The weapons makers, they're the ones that come away the
defense
best.
Contractors, politicians.
Everybody else, I don't see in any benefit.
The only silver lining I've ever been able to come to about what good does war serve any part of humanity? Yeah. You typically will see giant leaps forward in technology, especially around medicine, that come out of wars. That will definitely ends up benefiting humanity. Man, there's got to be a better way to come to those conclusions.
Sure, and I also,
that can't be the only good thing that
comes out of it. But then at the same time, I really hate bullies, and these wars are often started by bullies and perpetuated by bullies, and so there's a part of me that really wants to rally against that too. And I don't have the perfect answer for what the response is all the time, but I don't think the response is to look away, but it's very hard. And I think the US is always in a tough position of you sort of go in and stay for a long time like you do in Afghanistan and you're doomed. You sort of go in and out like you did in Libya and you're doomed, or you don't go in at all and like say in Syria and you're doomed.
Yep.
So there really isn't a right way, and that's the shitty part about it. Is and so that brings me back to what needs to be done to prevent these wars from the first place. Is there enough being done to stop these wars happening before they happen, you know, and that's where you see the real kind of failures, I guess, of the United Nations and other places that just, you know, these bodies were set up for that purpose, and we're not seeing that happen.